I've got a question for you all out there. Anybody have, $50 million lying around? Because I know some folks who would like to fire James Franklin, and boy, they're really justified in feeling that way.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest and craziest sport on planet Earth. Florida and Texas are both bad football teams, straight up, and surprises that are going to affect the playoff run later. All on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the FanDuel app today. So after a particular game, I come on this show, and I give my assessment of where I think fans' mood should be for that particular team, given the results of the game. They don't have to be directly correlated. You could have bad vibes after a win. You could have good vibes after a loss. I don't have a level low enough to describe how Penn State fans should be feeling. The number of schools willing to pay buyouts in the, $50+ million range, not as many as you would probably think. Because believe it or not, everywhere in the country, finances in college sports are pretty hard to come by. James Franklin should be fired for losing the game on Saturday. I don't believe he will. His track record is still one of a long run of success. His contract can keep him there for quite a long time. And I don't know that Penn State has the guts to pull the trigger. Should they? Yeah. That loss is one of the most shocking, unacceptably bad outcomes in recent memory. However, the last time we saw an outcome like that, where it shocked us to that degree, Ryan Day went on to win the national championship. So what do you do now, Penn State? You've lost 2 games in a row, and that was one of the most embarrassing things I've ever watched in college football. It's the first time since the mid-'80s that a top 10 team lost to an 0-4 school. You realize New Mexico, under a first-year head coach, shellacked UCLA in that stadium? You realize UCLA's offensive coordinator was calling plays for the first time? You realize they had 2 days to get ready for that system? All of a sudden, the most expensive defensive coordinator in college football couldn't stop Nico Iamaleava? Are you joking me? Nothing about this screams anything but giant embarrassment. And that's the fundamental reason why, as someone who has really defended James Franklin and said, boy, he wins a lot, he's good, I think he can break through, this was the year. This was the year on paper. And I talked about it a lot on this show. And I believed in Penn State coming into this year. And that's why the reaction should be as severe as it probably is for most of you out there. Because everything that was talked about with this Penn State team, it didn't go away. They lost a linebacker. Yeah, that stinks. No doubt about it. That's not why they lost this football game. James Franklin didn't have his team ready to go. He didn't get them in the right mindset to respond after having their heart ripped out of their chests again in a close, big game against Oregon last week. That looked like a team that let Oregon beat them twice because they weren't ready to go. UCLA is... They sure didn't look this way on Saturday. UCLA's horrible. They're not bad. They're not just okay. No, they're horrible. We've watched them all year. They're terrible. And all of a sudden, Nico reminds everyone why he's a big-time recruit. This is the most embarrassing loss in Penn State recent memory. I can't think of one that goes beyond it. There were legitimate jabs being made at UCLA about should they even be in the Big Ten? Are they even a Power 4 team? They're not really. They're not. They're Nico and a bunch of guys. I mean, they look good on Saturday. Nico sure looked good. With Rick Neusheisel's kid calling plays for the first time. You know what that tells me? Penn State didn't want to be there. Penn State didn't want to play. Penn State didn't believe. That looked like a team that was so flat emotionally, you can't start anywhere other than the head coach. So yeah, if you're in the fire James Franklin camp, I'm right there with you. Losing that game, yes, disappointing to lose at home to Oregon last week when you were one play away in a couple of different spots from winning. But your season wasn't over, and they played like a team whose season was over. Now it is. You're not going in Ohio State and winning. Heck, you might not beat Indiana. You might lose 2 more times this year. I don't even know that 10-2 Penn State should get into the college football playoff. Because frankly, this loss is so embarrassing for the Penn State program. And that's why the shift in James Franklin for a lot of people to we need to fire James Franklin. Yeah, he's been there for over a decade at this point. This isn't a coach in year 2 or year 3 who's still working out the kinks. Marcus Freeman had an embarrassing loss early in his career. He had an embarrassing loss last season. You know what happened? His team responded and they went to the national championship game. James Franklin's team responded after a brutal loss against a really good Oregon team by going and embarrassing the program. That's what they did. That comes back to the head coach. Whatever he told them at practice all week didn't work. Not only didn't work, sent them mentally in the wrong direction. And this feels so much more consequential than Ohio State losing to Michigan, which was startlingly bad. Still, something I can't fully comprehend. And yet, Ohio State responded in the positive. Penn State will have a chance to do that. But when they lost to Oregon, it felt like the life was sucked out of that football team and they just stopped believing. That looked like a team you should have been able to run your backups out there and win by 10 or more points. And the starting offense couldn't move on UCLA. The starting defense couldn't stop the Bruins with an interim staff. There is no level, there is no hyperbole that I can really think of that doesn't apply to this outcome for Penn State. So again, I ask if any of you out there are uber rich mega donors that have yachts the size of small cities. Do you have an extra $50 million or more? I've got some friends in Happy Valley that would like to use it for one specific purpose. And this is the problem for Penn State. You're stuck. You're probably stuck. Clemson is learning this with Dabo Swinney right now. Hard to get rid of a guy who's won for a really long time. Because he might suck you back in. Heck, they might beat Indiana later this year at home, and James Franklin might suck you right back into, hey, this team can make the playoff. But they now have to win out. And as I've said previously, missing the playoff with this roster, this is not about the players that are on the field. This is all on the coaching staff. No other way to see it. People like myself were high on Penn State coming into the year. Why? Because if you took away the Penn State logo and you just looked at the team they have and the staff they assembled, yeah, they should have been the best team in the Big Ten. They should have been a lock to the playoff and a national title contender. And on paper, they were. But when the potential that is on paper doesn't translate to the field, I don't look at the players as much as I look at the coaching staff and say, you didn't have them ready to go. You weren't able to win situationally against Oregon at home. That's one thing. This, going out the next week and embarrassing that UCLA is one of the worst Power 4 teams of the last several years. Ohio State at least lost to a bowl team in Michigan that ignited their run. The rivalry factor is what played up the embarrassment for Ryan Day in that particular spot and why fans were wanting him to be fired. It wasn't just they lost to a team they were better than. It was that they lost to a team who they hadn't beaten in the last several years. This wasn't that. This is just go out and be unable to get ready to play football. I mean, it's just incredible. It's one of the most incredibly shocking upsets in the last several years. We seem to say that a lot. Penn State's got to win out or they're not in the playoff. And I don't know how you feel like it could get better? What circumstances could Penn State create to give themselves a better opportunity to be a national title contender than this college football season? How can you do it? Experienced quarterback, top-tier defensive coordinator, great offensive coordinator, a roster that was just in the national semifinal, one drive from the national championship game that added some real pieces. Amari Campbell's a great player at linebacker. They went out and got Trevor Pena, the receiver. How much better can it be? How much better can it look? How much more potential can be there? Because a lot of people might say, oh, see, Penn State never had the potential. Nope. If you took a better coaching staff and you put this Penn State roster with that staff, this roster would go compete for a national championship. But you don't have a head coach who can do that. So I believed in James Franklin, and I feel pretty foolish because he looked incredibly foolish losing that game to UCLA. That is one of the most incredible things I've ever talked about here on the show. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter. All of that good stuff. You know what else happened? Florida won, and they made a huge mistake. First, this episode brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. It's their most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton is built for breakthroughs like UCLA's on Saturday, with tools that help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Kind of like the opposite of what James Franklin and his coaching staff did for Penn State over the weekend. They didn't help them reach peak performance. But guess what? Peloton is here to help you do that, because you don't want to be like Penn State. Nobody wants to be Penn State right now. You want to be anti-Penn State. Think of Peloton as the anti-Penn State for your fitness goals. Let yourself run, lift, flex, and push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. That's ONEPELOTON.com. Check them out at onepeloton.com. Texas is going to be unranked when I release my next top 25 because Texas isn't a very good football team. It's very easy to look at Arch Manning and say that he's the problem. He's a problem, no doubt about it. He is not the problem with the Texas Longhorns. So he was 16 of 29 with 2 interceptions in this game, and Florida just outplayed Texas from the jump. The Longhorns were off a bye. Now, I thought this would be a low-scoring slugfest because Florida's offense don't like that. Texas's defense really like that. And my one big key for the Gators in this game was, can you get Jaden Baugh going? Can you run the football? Because if you do, that's your path to an upset. And what do you know? Jaden Baugh has over 100 yards on the ground, and DJ Lagway looks a little bit more like DJ Lagway. 21 of 28, 298 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a pick. Florida made a mistake in this spot. Florida is making the same mistake that they made last year. They're winning football games with Billy Napier as their head coach. Because Florida's schedule going forward, certainly there's nothing easy about it necessarily. They have Texas A&M, who I think is really good, by the way. They have them this weekend, and Mississippi State, and Georgia, and they have to play Ole Miss, and Tennessee, and Florida State. So they still have the opportunity to go out there and lose games. But what this win has the opportunity to do for Florida fans, or maybe more accurately, the Florida administration, is delude themselves into thinking that Billy Napier could finally be getting it right. We have seen this story play out over and over and over again. Remember that scene in Arrested Development where Tobias Funke is asked, well, did it work for those people? No. These people always delude themselves into thinking that it will, but it never does. But it might work for us. This is how I'm feeling with Florida. They go out and win this football game. Please don't let yourself think that Florida's turned a quarter, that they figured it out, that they're a good team. Texas is just straight up not very good. And Arch Manning is at the center of those particular issues. Manning's inability to consistently make throws is astonishing for a guy who's waited his turn and is in the same offensive system. He's got the same voices around him. He should be so prepared, and this falls on Steve Sarkisian. And for those that were calling for Arch Manning a year ago and Quinn Ewers struggled, boy, you'd be a much better football team if Quinn Ewers was still your quarterback. But hey, at least you finally played Arch. At least it finally happened. But here we are at about the midway point of the regular season, and those issues we saw Texas have against Ohio State in week 1 are still there. There's nothing about Arch Manning that looks settled, consistent, repeatable, good, high level. There's a flash or a glimpse here and there, and you think, oh, maybe he's settling it. No, he isn't. He isn't. He's not the answer. He might not be the only problem. He certainly wasn't on Saturday in Gainesville, because why in the world? What a poor showing from the Texas defense. Why in the world was Florida able to go up and down the field? You saw what a real defense, LSU, the type I thought that Texas had going into the game. It's why I predicted it to be so low scoring. Why was Florida able to walk up and down the field? The Gators this year have been a horrifically bad offense. They have scored, wait for it, 16, 10, and 7 coming into this game. And then all of a sudden your defense off a bye gives up 29. All of a sudden the Gators can run the ball. I knew that was the key for Florida. Didn't think it was going to happen. It's why I picked Texas to win the game. I thought Florida would keep it close. But neither of these teams are actually good. Every year we come into the season wondering, who are the top 10 teams preseason going to be that finish the year unranked? Texas is going to be one of them. By the way, I was checking out FanDuel earlier. I'm not kidding when I say this. FanDuel has got Texas as a 3.5-point favorite against Oklahoma. My record against the spread this year is putrid. You could call it the Texas offense of best bets this season. And I just tell you to go put your mortgage on Oklahoma getting points, even if John Mateer doesn't play. Texas might play that game with the second best quarterback on the field. I mean, it's so bad. The experiment just needs to be over, and Texas needs to figure out, okay, all right, what's our plan going forward? What else do we have? What are the other options? It's gone on long enough. It's one thing if you have a true freshman at this point. You know, Bryce Underwood or Dylan Raiola last year, or other young guys that have started over the years. If it's their first season and it looks like this, you don't give up. You don't say, all right, we're done. Arch Manning is the same age. He was in the same recruiting class as Dante Moore, who is the current betting favorite to win the Heisman Trophy. Texas and Oregon, can we say those are comparable programs from a support and infrastructure standpoint? Can we say that at both of those programs, they have a history of bringing in weapons and having a coaching staff that is successful at the quarterback position? Yes, we can, because we've watched it play out over the last several seasons. Some guys just don't have it. And Arch Manning doesn't have it. If he were a true freshman or even a redshirt freshman, I might be able to forgive what we've seen so far. But when he's in his third year of college football and it looks like this, at the midway point in the year, we're done. We're done. This is not something, this is just who he is. If you're okay with that going forward, boy, you have lowered your standards as a Texas fan. I doubt they have. I don't think they should, because there have to be better options at quarterback. There just have to be. How much worse could it look? If you had a backup quarterback, if it wasn't Arch Manning playing quarterback for the Longhorns over the last couple of weeks, how would you be feeling right now? Yeah, now we know this guy isn't the answer going forward. It should not look this difficult. The game looks easier for guys that are younger and less experienced than Arch Manning. I'm watching Bryce Underwood each week desperately try to find a wide receiver that can consistently catch the ball. And I see Bryce Underwood having some growing pains and not always making the best throws or right reads, but he's a true freshman. Arch Manning is having these problems the midway point of his third year of college football. Meanwhile, Nico just popped at UCLA with a first-time play caller. And by the way, had his team at least in the playoff last year, still had room to grow with Josh Heupel. But I feel better about Nico right now than I do Arch Manning. Maybe explore that transfer option in the offseason, Texas. Just food for thought. But my takeaway watching Texas, Florida, neither of these teams are good. Neither of them are any good. And I was bullish on the Florida is overrated train coming into the year, but I like Texas coming into the season because I thought, yeah, Arch Manning's been sitting and waiting, and we know Sark is good with offense and quarterbacks, and Arch doesn't have it. And some guys just don't have it. There's no perfect player rating or evaluation system in the world. They don't have it in the NFL. They don't have it in college football. They don't have it in college basketball. They don't have it in Major League Baseball. I mean, keep going down the list. Nothing's perfect. And guess what? Arch Manning doesn't have it between the ears. The game does not look like it is slowing down whatsoever. And at this point in his career, if it hasn't at this point, I don't know how you're going to suddenly fix that going forward. It would require quite the turnaround from Steve Sarkisian. But maybe he was playing Quinn Ewers last year for a reason. And that's that he saw, yeah, Arch isn't ready. Arch is not that guy. And a coaching staff, sometimes you can only do so much. I've seen Sark have success. I have not seen Arch Manning have success before. I think it's more on Arch. Did the rest of the team for Texas play well? Nope. They don't look like a good football team. But the goals you had coming into the season, they are done. And you should not have Arch Manning as your starting quarterback in 2026. Do whatever you want the rest of the year, frankly. I don't care a whole heck of a lot, but they need to go in a different direction. Florida winning that game. I just hope they don't delude themselves down in Gainesville to think, oh, see, Billy's got it. Billy's figured out. No, you beat a Texas team that's not actually any good. They're unranked in my top 25. So is Florida. They're going to remain that way for the foreseeable future. So, a couple of surprises. Speaking of young quarterbacks, some rough young quarterback play in Lincoln. And look, we got to talk about these teams. They're off your radar, but they won't be for long, nor should they be. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots are running on Square. There are certain businesses that make the neighborhood. These are the places that become an extension of the home, whether it's the sports bar dedicated to your team's fan base, the spot with the best wings on game day, or that beloved local chain that's been rooted in your community for years. These businesses are what bring people together, which is what makes sports great. And when the neighborhood businesses thrive, the whole neighborhood thrives. And you've probably used Square without even realizing it. When you go to one of these local spots and you want to check out and get a nice, quick, easy payment there, Square is probably the one that is using that. They're helping local businesses thrive, and that helps neighborhoods all around the world. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses around the world. You can go to square.com/go/lockedoncollege to learn more. But before you do, go support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode also brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. I'm cursed. I'm absolutely cursed. It's not FanDuel's fault. It's my fault for being cursed. Maybe I need an Etsy witch to get this just unbelievable spellbinding run of negativity for my best bets. I mean, how does Vanderbilt not cover 10.5? I just... The late touchdown from Alabama is why I don't have a winning week again. I am on an unprecedented run of a lack of success. I'm telling you to fade my picks each week. I'm trying to make you money, and FanDuel is the way that's happening. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. You pick a bet, you put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. And you know what? I just fade the picks. Fade the picks. Everything I touch, I'm the opposite of King Midas. Instead of everything I touch turns to gold, everything I touch rots immediately. So, what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today. Get started. Check them out at FanDuel.com. You want to talk about rough play from young quarterbacks? How many of you saw what happened in Lincoln, Nebraska over the weekend? This is a wild game. Michigan State was down, then they were up, then they were down again. The line at FanDuel closed at, of course I had to make this one of my best bets. I thought Michigan State would cover 11.5. They lose to Nebraska, 38-27. Vegas undefeated. Dylan Raiola and Aiden Childs were doing their best Arch Manning impressions on Saturday. Raiola ends 16 of 24 for 194 yards, a touchdown and a pick. He played worse than that. His QBR was 18.9. Aiden Childs was 9 of 23 for 85 yards and 2 interceptions. he also feels like he played worse than that. Nebraska had one of the best play calls of the weekend on 3rd and goal early in the game. That was just fun. Shout out to Dana Holgerson, the Cornhuskers offensive coordinator. But, going into this matchup, I felt like it was one of those games Nebraska historically finds a way to lose. And, hey, time to figure out a way to win. Well, they did. They didn't play their best ball. They only ran for 88 yards. They turned the ball over. It was not great. But they found a way to win. And is Michigan State great? Nope. Nope, they're definitely not. But a reminder, the Nebraska schedule, which is going to be a similar theme with the teams I'll talk about next, Nebraska schedule, very favorable. Now, they go to Maryland next week. They're 4-1. Ask Washington how easy it is to go to Maryland. That's a respectable football team. Malik Washington, good young quarterback. Malik Washington, much better quarterback than Arch Manning. That's just a fact of life. So they go to Maryland. Then they've got Minnesota on a Friday. Then Northwestern. Oh, wait. Where are the tough games here? Then USC. That's at home. At UCLA. At Penn State. I mean, how hard is Penn State, really? And then Iowa. There's not currently a ranked team on their schedule. I don't think that's reflected in the AP top 25 anyway. Not mine. But that schedule for Nebraska, if they're able to have just one more loss, do they get in? They don't have a great win. They've lost to the only ranked team they've played so far. But would they get the Big Ten bias that applies to the SEC as well? If you're 10-2, you get to go to the playoff. We'd find out. By the way, I'd like to point out that a week 1 win against Cincinnati is looking better and better. The Bearcats look like a surprise team in the Big 12. 2-0 to begin league play with a win over a couple of solid teams in Iowa State and Kansas. So just going to throw that one out there. That win might accumulate in value over time. But Nebraska, man, they were a pretty popular, I'd say fairly popular, playoff surprise team over their win total of 7.5, which I took them to do as well before the year. I wonder, are they right there or are they a year away? They remind me a little bit of Michigan, where I see the potential, I see promise, but I'm just kind of, It's why I picked Cincinnati to upset Iowa State over the weekend. Now, I didn't make it a best bet, so that's, of course, what resulted in Cincinnati getting it done. But I'd watched Iowa State this year, and they were 5-0 and ranked 15th, and I went, yeah, something's just kind of missing. The cohesion, the pop, the wow, the thing you do really well. I think Nebraska's okay. It's a good, solid win, but frankly, for the Cornhuskers fans, I don't think there are any real vibes here. And I feel the same way about Michigan State. You went and lost in the exact way that I expected you to. Same thing with Florida. They win. I don't think Florida fans should be over the moon. Frankly, I think they should be disappointed that Napier has a chance to save his job the rest of the season. You're not going to the playoffs. You're not going to make the SEC championship game. What are you playing for at this point? To keep around your coach so he can go 6-6 again next year? Nebraska's in a different spot. Nebraska is trying to kind of Indiana SMU their way into the playoff with, no really great wins, a couple of okay ones, and hey, our record's good and we play in a good conference. Do we get in to the playoff? That could absolutely happen. But I just wonder, if they can go on the road and handle Maryland and Minnesota in the next couple of weeks, I'd feel better about it. I suspect they lose one of those games and probably end the year as I predicted with 9 wins. But over 7.5, I like that bet before the year with our friends at FanDuel, and I still feel that way about Nebraska. But yeah, that was an ugly game. Ugly game. So, speaking of teams to just keep an eye on for the playoff, are you ready to talk about Duke and Virginia yet? I'll talk about Miami on tomorrow's show. They were really impressive. Really, I'm really impressed with Miami. Hard to not be at this point in the year with the way that they're playing football. The biggest threats to them in the ACC, in no particular order, are Georgia Tech, number 1, and then in a tie for second, Virginia and Duke. Virginia found a way to win on the road at Louisville last week. Duke won convincingly on the road in a cross-country trip against Cal. Darian Mensah's coming into a groove. Those teams haven't lost an ACC conference game yet. And does that speak to where the ACC is at? Maybe. Maybe it does. I watched Tulane beat Duke, and they were the better football team earlier this year, but Tulane's also a top 25 team in my Locked On College Football poll. So, are you ready to hear that conversation? You should be. Because right now, Virginia and Duke are controlling their own paths to get to the ACC championship game and maybe the playoff. I don't think either gets there as an at-large. But if you go to the ACC championship game, you're going to have a chance. And last year, Arizona State was a surprise team. And maybe in the Big 12 this year, it's going to be Cincinnati. But these teams are, I mean, they're good, at least. I don't think that they're great, but are they good? Yeah, they might be good enough. And you might look around at the end of the year, and all three of these teams, Nebraska, Duke, and Virginia, I think have the same thing in common. Because they don't have particularly tough paths forward, and they are good teams but not great ones, they could be this year's SMU or Indiana from last year, where you look up and go, hey, I guess they're getting in the playoff kind of by default because they're the best remaining, because they're taking care. There's a long way to go. We've still got about half the regular season left in conference championship week. Long way to go. But we have passed the point where these stories can't be ignored, and I bet they're not on a lot of people's radar. But Virginia and Duke, I liked Duke coming into the year. Didn't have Virginia on the radar. Did not think they were going to be there. But lo and behold, Clemson's downfall has created an opening, and Georgia Tech has filled it most significantly. But that ACC title race, that looks like Miami in the field right now, with Clemson not playing anywhere near its full potential. I'll talk about what they did in North Carolina on tomorrow's show. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time, and until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.